Program data confirms Starship Flight 12 has slipped to January 2026, marking the first version 3 configuration delay that directly impacts NASA's $4.3 billion Artemis lunar landing contract. Industry sources indicate this timeline shift creates critical pressure on the late 2026 crew mission schedule. Critical development in the Artemis program. Internal reports confirm Starship Flight 12 has slipped to January 2026, marking the first documented delay in SpaceX's version 3 configuration timeline. This isn't just another test flight slip. Program data reveals this delay eliminates the 8-month schedule buffer built into NASA's $4.3 billion Human Landing System contract. The data confirms what industry sources have been tracking. Version 3 represents a fundamental architecture change requiring extended flight validation protocols. Documents from NASA's Mission Planning Office show the late 2026 Artemis 3 crew landing depends entirely on a successful orbital refueling demonstration in Q1 2026. That demonstration window just compressed by 4 months. Here's the critical factor driving this timeline pressure. Version 3 incorporates a 40% increase in propellant capacity compared to previous iterations, along with redesigned header tanks and upgraded Raptor engines, producing 280 metric tons of sea-level thrust. NASA's own certification requirements mandate these systems undergo orbital refueling validation before any crew rating consideration. According to program review documents, SpaceX must demonstrate 3 critical capabilities with version 3: orbital propellant transfer at scale, extended loiter time in lunar orbit, and precision landing with the increased mass configuration. Each capability requires dedicated flight testing that wasn't necessary for earlier cargo variants. The strategic implications are significant. NASA's Artemis program review shows 0 schedule margin remaining for the crew mission. Internal analysis indicates every quarter of additional delay costs approximately $200 million in extended operations and ground support. For context, Apollo faced identical timeline pressure in 1968 when the LM-3 lunar module experienced similar 8-month delays before Apollo 11. Reports reveal SpaceX is prioritizing orbital refueling demonstration over their traditional rapid iteration approach. Industry sources indicate the company is conducting extended ground testing of version 3's propellant management systems, a departure from their typical hardware-rich development cycle. This timeline shift creates cascading effects throughout the Artemis architecture. The Orion spacecraft, Gateway lunar station, and ground systems all depend on validated Starship capabilities for mission planning. NASA's own documentation shows backup scenarios are being developed for Q2 2026 launch windows, but congressional testimony reveals the $93 billion total Artemis budget assumes a 2026 landing demonstration. The next phase of analysis reveals why this delay represents more than schedule pressure. It's reshaping the entire competitive landscape for lunar exploration capabilities. Historical data reveals this timeline. Pressure has a direct precedent, and the outcome determined the success of America's first lunar landing. In 1968, Apollo's lunar module LM-3 encountered critical delays that eliminated NASA's 8-month schedule buffer, creating identical pressure on Apollo 11's July 1969 launch window. Internal NASA documents from that era show the agency had to accelerate testing protocols while maintaining safety standards. Exactly the challenge facing Starship version 3 today. The data confirms version 3 represents a fundamental architecture shift requiring extended validation. Program specifications show a 40% increase in propellant capacity, from 1,200 tons to 1,680 tons of total propellant mass. This isn't incremental improvement. It's a complete structural redesign affecting center of gravity, engine performance parameters, and orbital mechanics calculations. Industry sources indicate SpaceX must validate these changes through multiple test flights before NASA will certify the vehicle for crew operations. According to NASA's own Artemis program review, 3 critical dependencies now rest entirely on Starship version 3 performance metrics. First, orbital refueling demonstration with the new propellant capacity. Second, extended duration orbital operations validation. The vehicle must prove 30-day space endurance before lunar missions. Third, precision landing capability with the heavier configuration. Each dependency requires documented flight data that doesn't exist yet. The budget implications are significant and measurable. GAO analysis indicates every quarter of additional delay costs $200 million in extended operations across the entire Artemis program. That includes maintaining SLS production schedules, gateway operations readiness, and ground systems staffing. With NASA's current $93 billion budget authorization, these extended costs create strategic pressure on other program elements. Here's the competitive factor that changes everything. China's Chang'e missions are targeting 2030 for crewed lunar capabilities. Timeline analysis shows this creates a 4-year strategic window where American lunar leadership depends entirely on Artemis' success. CNSA's documented progress on their Long March 9 super heavy-lift vehicle indicates their tracking toward this timeline. Every month of Starship delay narrows America's competitive advantage in lunar exploration capabilities. Internal reports confirm SpaceX has shifted priorities in response to this pressure. Industry sources indicate the company is now prioritizing orbital refueling demonstration over their traditional rapid iteration approach. This represents a decisive change in development philosophy, from test to destruction to validate for certification. Program data shows SpaceX is allocating additional engineering resources to simulation and ground testing rather than flight testing. The strategic implications extend beyond schedule pressure. NASA's lunar architecture depends on validated Starship capabilities for cargo delivery, crew transportation, and surface operations. Without version 3 validation by Q2 2026, the entire Artemis program faces systemic delays that could push crew missions into 2027 launch windows, potentially allowing China to achieve competitive parity in lunar capabilities. Internal analysis shows NASA now has zero schedule margin for Artemis 3 crew mission. Program data confirms the January 2026 Starship Flight 12 slip eliminates the 8-month buffer that mission planners considered essential for crew certification protocols. Documents from NASA's Artemis Management Office reveal backup scenarios being developed for Q2 2026 lunar landing window, a contingency that pushes crew operations dangerously close to the 2027 launch window boundary. The strategic implications extend beyond schedule pressure. SpaceX manufacturing data shows Booster 19 represents new production baseline affecting all future vehicles, a systematic shift that requires extended validation protocols for each subsequent flight article. Industry sources indicate this production change adds 6 to 8 weeks to vehicle processing timelines, creating compounding delays across the manifest. Congressional testimony reveals the $93 billion total Artemis budget depends on 2026 landing demonstration success. GAO analysis documents show every quarter of additional delay triggers $200 million in extended operations costs, with budget implications cascading through contractor agreements and international partner commitments. The data confirms what program managers suspected. Version 3 timeline pressure now affects the entire decade's lunar exploration capability. Timeline analysis reveals the critical constraint. Every month of additional delay pushes crew mission into 2027 launch windows, when lunar South Pole lighting conditions become suboptimal for sustained operations. NASA's own mission planning documents show 2026 represents the last optimal window for establishing continuous lunar presence before 2029. Strategic assessment indicates version 3 success rate will determine decade of lunar exploration capability. Internal reports suggest NASA is developing parallel certification pathways to maintain 2026 crew mission viability. But these alternatives require congressional budget approval and international partner agreement modifications. The decisive factor remains Starship's orbital refueling demonstration, a capability that must be validated before any crew operations can proceed. According to program review data, this single technical milestone now carries the weight of America's entire lunar strategy.